In very generalized terms, you can categorize the psychological state of any woman into three distinct categories. She can be psychologically dependent, she can be psychologically independent, or the ultimate achievement, she can be psychologically interdependent. Now, as a general rule, I don't tend to advise any man to date a woman who is still at the level of psychological dependence, because she's just going to cause you so much pain, suffering, and misery. She's so undeveloped as a person that I really just don't think that it's worth it. Let's say you're dating a girl and she's got obvious self-esteem issues. You know, she's feeling unworthy of being loved. She's feeling like she's not living up to her own potential. She's just got that low self-esteem. And so she's got a kind of depression or anxiety. She just feels bad about herself. Now that's her default state. That's how she's feeling. But let's say you make a comment one day, say something like, "I'm nervous about making rent this month." You know, it's just a comment about your own anxiety. Well, then suddenly she gets really, really angry at you. Like, "How dare you say that to me? Don't you know I'm under enough stress? Don't make me feel bad about, you know, how little I'm contributing financially. How could you be so insensitive? You should know how I feel." And you defend yourself saying, no, I wasn't making any comment about you. I was just saying I'm stressed about whether or not we're going to be able to make rent this month. At which point she like breaks down in tears and she has this massive emotional reaction. Now, it's obvious to you that what she's experiencing here, all of her emotions, that just has to do with her. You know, you may have triggered her emotions with your comment, but you're not the cause of it. But because she's in a state of psychological dependence, she honestly can't make that distinction. You triggered her negative emotions, therefore you are the cause of them. You are responsible for her emotions. That's what codependence is. I once dealt with a woman like this. Her name was Julia. And I'm going to release a video telling you the whole story of how I was humiliated by her, how it turned me bitter, all the lessons I learned. Once I reach 2,500 supporters on Patreon, that's my goal. So check out my Patreon if you want to see how close I am to that goal. But a girl like this, she's always going to make you miserable because of this fundamental lack of understanding about where she ends. She's always going to make you responsible for how she's feeling. She's always going to look for an external circumstance to blame, you know? So if she's feeling bad about herself, she doesn't do what most normal people do and look inside herself and try and go, well, where am I lacking? Where can I improve? What kind of self-growth can I, utilize here? No, she's always going to externalize the issue and then try and control her emotions by controlling her outside circumstances. And guess what? If you're in a relationship with a girl like this, you are her outside circumstances. And so she tries to deal with her own dysfunction by controlling you. You can see that this is a complete recipe for disaster. This is why she's going to make you utterly miserable. It's not her fault. It's never her fault. She is... she's perfect. It's you that is the problem here. If you just never did anything wrong, if you never made any mistakes, you never ever triggered her negative emotions, then she'd have no issues. The two of you could get along fine, but it's the fact that you're less than perfect that's always going to be the problem. Now, a woman like this who's psychologically dependent, she's always going to make the relationship abusive because to her, she honestly doesn't even understand the concept of psychological autonomy. I'm not speaking with hyperbole there. I literally mean in her mind, she can't conceptualize of a way of interacting with the world where other people aren't to blame for that. That's a hallmark of this psychological codependency. So she never is going to take responsibility, not because she's not choosing to. She doesn't even know what that means. That concept has no meaning to her whatsoever. It's your fault. That's an automatic reflex. Women like this sort of exist as emotional vampires, they're like parasites and they suck off the energy of healthier organisms, stronger organisms than themselves. They're just feeding off other people's energy. It's absolutely draining. This is why when some guys, they're in a relationship with a woman like this, they often use expressions like, "Oh my God, I was so drained after every interaction with her. I just felt like I needed to get away from her to recharge," because being with an emotional vampire like that, it's utterly draining. And some guys don't see it. Like if you're in a relationship and some of this sounds like it's describing you, but you need confirmation whether or not your relationship is toxic and abusive like this, whether you're dating a woman like this, send me some questions on Hey Hero. Check out the link in the description box below. I'll send you a personalized video and I'll confirm to you whether or not your relationship is a problem. But it's not unlikely to see women who approach emotions in this way, to approach all aspects of the relationship in this way. Like, you often find these emotional vampire women, they're also looking for men to take care of them financially, which, I mean, it makes sense. At least they're consistent, right? Like, because if they're not responsible for their own emotions, why would they be responsible for paying half the rent? Why would they be responsible for doing the dishes? You know, like, if you really loved them, then you would understand that they're overwhelmed and you would do that for her. And if you insist on some kind of equity in your relationship, that's just you not being sensitive to her needs, you see? It really is disgusting. I have no tolerance for it. A woman like that, she's still operating at the level of being a child. It's just awful. Never ever date a woman like that. And of course, you know, from a distance, you can have sympathy for somebody who's so psychologically undeveloped. She's obviously had a completely messed up childhood to have her psychological boundaries, you know, so askew. But compassion aside, you can't date a woman like this. You have to be selfish in your dating choices, because a woman like that's just going to chew you up and spit you out. You know, she's going to suck all of the goodness out of you until you're no longer useful to her as an organism that she can no longer parasite off of. And then she'll just find some other guy, which is why I say, at a minimum, you need to be dating a woman who's achieved a basic level of psychological independence. That's really non-negotiable. So what does it mean to say a woman is psychologically independent? Well, it means that she understands where she ends and another person begins. She's able to take care of herself. She takes responsibility for her own emotions. She can make up her own mind, her own opinions. You know, she's competent and confident in her own abilities to perform basic tasks. And if this sounds like an amazing achievement to you, like, oh wow, I need to meet a woman like that, do you see how depressing that is? You know, this isn't some amazing achievement. A woman who is psychologically independent isn't a hero. You know, we shouldn't be rolling out the red carpet and throwing her parade. That is the basic minimum for what should be required of an adult person. So raise your expectations, you know, expect more from women. That should be the bare minimum standard. So all my brothers out there who have these minimum standards for women, subscribe to this channel, join the community. And if you've already subscribed, like this video. You know, we only need to be dating psychologically independent women. But that's at a minimum, because even psychological independence isn't the highest goal here, because it can actually serve as a limitation sometimes. Think about it. Do you really want to date a girl who never shares her thoughts and opinions with you, never shares her struggles and her emotions? She never wants help sorting out any problems because she's so fiercely independent. You know, I need to do all of this myself. It honestly, from a practical level, that also becomes tiresome. You know, she can't accept help. She can't accept nice things from you. She won't let you buy her dinner. She won't let you move in with her. You know, she can't start a life together because she needs to do it herself. Honestly, it becomes a huge problem. But this is why psychological independence, although it's a good thing that somebody has the capacity to do that, it is not the highest psychological state that a woman should be shooting for. Psychological interdependence is. So what does psychological interdependence look like? Okay, so imagine you cook the dinner and then she does the dishes afterwards. That's interdependence. Imagine you have a high-paying job and you make all of the money and she stays home and she raises the children. That's interdependence. Let's say one day she helps you process like some traumatic memories from your childhood, but then the next day she's dealing with some issues of self-worth, and so you help her. You know, you both help each other. That's interdependence. That's normal. That's healthy. That's what's preferred. And as human beings, we're actually wired that way. That's the normal state of things. Never forget that we evolved as part of tribes and communities. We are intensely social beings. You see, it is healthy to be able to allow another person to help you when you need it. That's a sign of emotional strength. And somebody who can't accept help and can't let another person in, that shows that they have trust issues. They have a fragility that's not healthy. You know, they're so fixated on doing it themselves and on being independent that they push other people away, and that's not good for a relationship. So do you see what the difference here between independence and interdependence is? Because independence means you do it all yourself, but interdependence includes independence. So you have that capacity, you have the talents, you have the skills, you have the intelligence. If you needed to, you could do it all yourself. You can be independent, but you also recognize that there are certain practical benefits to being part of a team and working together. And it feels good. Like, independence feels good. It feels good to not be dependent on anybody else. You can do it on your own. That feels good. But it feels way better to trust another person and allow them to help you and for you to rely on another person. That feels amazing, and that's the state to shoot for in a relationship. So in that sense, interdependence is not really separate from independence. It contains independence within it. It just has the capacity to go further when the situation calls for it. And this advice is not really gendered. So, you know, that minority of female audience members who watch my video, you should take this on as well. Do not date a man who is psychologically dependent, because in the same way, he's just going to drain you of all of your energy. A high quality person is capable of being psychologically independent, but can go further into interdependence in their romantic relationships with somebody who justifies that kind of trust. How are you supposed to feel when you're in a relationship? That is a simple question, but as I made a video about it, I realized that it's actually very complex, and a lot of people don't understand what emotions they are meant to experience while in a relationship. What does a healthy relationship feel like? Anyway, this is the latest video on my Patreon. If you want to see that, just go and sign up, check it out, look at all the amazing topics that you get. It's just $5 a month. It's a great way to support the creator. I'd love to see you over there.